for the opportunity to go 12 rounds with Superman. I'm going to start off in round one by asking you, we've had news that you're working on a new book. Can you tell me about it? Well, I've had a wonderful opportunity to purchase one of the first copies that have come out. And can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, it's called Nothing is Impossible, Reflections on a New Life. And it's a collection of essays on different topics such as humor, parenting, faith, religion, advocacy, hope, recovery, from the point of view of having been injured for 7 years and turning 50.
Since your injury, your family's been a tower of strength to yourself and many other families who've had to deal with spinal cord injury. What advice can you give families who have to face a long road ahead with someone with a spinal cord injury?
I think it's very important to express, as caregivers, how you feel, because those of us who are injured, or certainly in my experience, feel quite guilty for becoming a burden to our families. So that can be a cause of resentment, can be a cause of conflict within the family, and I think that the caregivers, whether they're male or female, really should should express themselves and say that they're frustrated or they're tired or they need a break, just as we who are sitting in wheelchairs should be able to say that we're uncomfortable or depressed or whatever we feel. I think that communication is absolutely essential, and that nobody within a family should try to hide anything or cover it up. Communication is the key to relationships and to making the best of a bad situation.
Where do you draw your strength from?
I draw my strength from my family, from countless friends and supporters all around the world, and from the opportunity that I have to use the fact that I'm a public figure to try to change policy, to try to make a difference, not only for myself but for everybody else. It's not a job that I would have applied for, but nevertheless, it's sort of been assigned it.
Chris, how do you cope with daily frustrations of spinal cord injury, especially dependency on others and recurrent medical complications? We've had an opportunity already to hear how much healthier you've got, but how did you cope, or how do you cope with daily frustrations?
When I feel frustrated, I try to channel the frustration into action. And I pick something positive that I can do, whether it's to do something more for the foundation, or whether it's to do more exercise, or whether it's to get in touch with a friend that I've neglected, or whether it's to dictate my thoughts so that they can be written down, or even just speaking them aloud to others can make a big difference. But the worst thing that you can do is sit there and be stoic and silent. That is only the way to a downward spiral, and that's very dangerous. In my book, as a matter of fact, I refer to something which I call the numb zone, and by that I mean a zone mentally that is mental paralysis. I mean, we're already physically paralyzed. If you become mentally paralyzed, it's a double injury. And I think there are things we can do to avoid becoming mentally paralyzed, of avoiding getting into that state where we don't care, where we don't want to get out of bed, where we don't want to do anything, that we don't even want to be helped, it's very, very important to avoid going into that numb zone. That's very damaging.
I think certainly Herman and I know a lot of people in the numb zone, and thanks for getting that across, because we'll try and sell that when we get back home. I know you spend a lot of time each day keeping your body in shape, but I'm interested in how much time you spend doing hobbies and pursuing other interests away from therapy. What other activities do you partake in?
Attending my my youngest son's sporting events, primarily baseball and hockey. Going to church, going into New York City to go to the theater, to go to dinner, having people over, having friends over, and going, socializing with people around town. Come on in, have you got liquid?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm dying.
Getting dry there.
Can I get anybody ice water?
We can't for now.
How's Dolly? Is she still around?
Thanks.
Yeah, Dolly is still around.
Okay. Please really send her my regards when you see her. I'm Ari.
Okay, I'll tell her. No
Um,
problem.
Okay, Chris, so you've...
when I was, there's more. And I'm going to the movies. Fortunately, my daughter is 18 and goes to university only less than an hour away. So she comes down pretty often, and I go up to see her pretty frequently. My oldest son Matthew and I have been spending a lot of time together because he did the photographs for my book, and we spent a year and a half together while he made a documentary about me, which I assume will play in South Africa at some point. It's just played domestically on ABC, and will be in England in October, and I'm sure at some point we'll come to South Africa. So I have a lot of things to do besides physical therapy and work for the foundation. Put it this way, I'm never bored.
Yeah, sure about that. We've had a chance to chat about your recovery in debt, and I must ask you then, we recently had news of new movement, hot and cold sensation, that you've recovered, that you have recovered. Can you give us details of this good news?
Well, as of today, we're talking in late September of 2002. In a nutshell, I'm able to move about 20% of my body, although in most cases I need to be in a situation where gravity is removed, such as lying in a bed or floating in a pool. But that's a great improvement from only being able to move my shoulders, which was the condition that I was in 1995. So that's been very gratifying. I can straighten out my legs. I can raise my right wrist. I can open my arms. I can push off like someone doing the backstroke from a swimming pool wall, and with somebody offering resistance. In fact, the people who work with me take turns when we're in the pool trying to prevent me from pushing backwards. And most of these guys are firemen. So it gets quite competitive. A competitive competition is a great way to improve. And when I first started doing the leg pushes off the wall, I couldn't tolerate much resistance. And now they have to give me a good fight because I can push quite hard. So all of this right now is just only proof of principle that exercise has an effect, not only on maintaining health, but on achieving actual recovery. But it hasn't it hasn't translated into anything that I would say alters the quality of my life. I'm still in a sitting buffalo chair. I'm still on a ventilator. However, the health benefits have been tremendous because, with good bone density, with good muscle mass, with good circulation and cardiovascular conditioning, the health of my, just overall inside and out, improves the quality of my life, keeps me out of the hospital, and, it's just something that I don't know how far it'll go, but while we wait for science, at least have the satisfaction of knowing that just with exercise comes, mental, a better mental and emotional outlook on life, as well as the knowledge that I'm preparing myself for what science may develop hopefully in the near future.
You started your quest for a cure. You stated that you'll be walking by your 50th birthday. Now that you've turned 50 or turning 50 tomorrow, and you're not walking yet, has this dampened your quest for a cure or accelerated it?
No, it accelerated it because what happened in this country, I think, was very, very unfortunate. One of the most promising areas of research, embryonic stem cells, which have the capacity to become any cell type or tissue in the body, and therefore a useful tool in curing all kinds of diseases ranging from spinal cord injuries to ALS to Parkinson's, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, etc. Well, these embryonic stem cells were first isolated at the University of Wisconsin in 1998, but due to political controversy here, the government, the National Institutes of Health, was not allowed to fund any embryonic stem cell research. So universities did the best they could. The private sector did some work, but not very much because they didn't know whether or not it was going to be banned or what the federal policy was going to be. And then, of course, in 2001, President Bush said that the government could fund 64 lines that had been obtained before August 9th of that year. But that really was a political compromise because the cells, the lines were owned by foreign countries, by pharmaceutical companies, and most of them were contaminated with mouse cells so that the FDA wouldn't approve them for therapy, so it was really not good news. Nevertheless, we carry on the best we can, and fortunately other governments like the UK and Singapore, Sweden, France, Switzerland, Israel are all progressing quite well. And we live in a global village, so that if cures are found in one country, they will translate to others. But the point is, a number of scientists have told me that if we had full government support for stem cell research from stem cells derived from any source, with ethical oversight and proper review and oversight by the government. That I might have made it. Now, to say I could have, I would have, I should have, that's a game that is not very, very profitable. However, just that notion that it would have been close, or I might have even made it, has only fueled my desire to try to reverse government policy, to perhaps take it to the states individually in the absence of government leadership, or deadlock, in the federal government, and to do everything I can help with other countries to help the legislation go forward. So no, it's given me more of an incentive, and technically, actually, I did walk before my 50th birthday, but I was in a swimming pool with about 5 people holding me up. But I did take steps, and you'll see that in the documentary when it plays in South Africa, because it was all put on film, and in the meantime, you can read about it because I write about it in the book.
Okay.
So in a way, I kind of made it almost.
Well done, Chris. How long do you think it'll be before a cure is found and proves effective and functional? And who do you think will qualify?
There's no way to put a date on when a cure will be found, because every spinal cord injury is different, and because it may require a combination of approaches to effect cure. In other words, I don't think that there's going to be a magic bullet. However, there's so much going on around the world right now. There are human trials happening in a number of countries. They can't be talked about yet because they're early. They're phase 1, which is safety. Of course, phase 2 is efficacy, to see how many people it help. And then phase 3 has to be done on a few hundred people. And that can take, 3 to 5 years. But nevertheless, I think that there's no question that the injured spinal cord can be repaired, both in the acute and chronic phase. How chronic? Well, I'll give you an example. In this laboratory where Dr. McDonald works in St. Louis, he started what's called an activity-based recovery program, where people are put in pools and on treadmills and bikes, all of that. And there are many of these centers around the country, and indeed around the world. But there's a guy named Kent Waldron from Texas. There's a friend of mine. He was an injured football player more than 20 years ago. And he's got the use of his upper body, but he never did anything with his legs. So his legs are just emaciated. So Dr. McDonald brought him up to St. Louis and put him on the same kind of bike that I ride. And he hadn't done anything for his legs in over 20 years. And even his legs responded to electrostimulation. And he was able, with those emaciated legs, to push the pedal of the bike. And so now, having seen that, he's now getting hold of a bike, and he's going to start working on his lower body. So what I would say, I face a lot of people who have been injured since Vietnam, and they say, just stop bothering with the cure, don't even think about it, and I say, look, our foundation spends a great deal of money on quality of life for people living with disabilities. In fact, we were given $3 million a year for the next 5 years. And we opened a paralysis resource center. And all people have to do is go on paralysis.org in the U.S. It might work even overseas too, I'm sure, and be referred to accessibility, to job opportunities, to transportation, etc., to assisted living. You know, so it's not fair to say that we don't care about care. We do. Having said that, I want to get out of this chair. Having said that, I hate being disabled. And I accept it, but I hate it. So turning that anger into something positive has been that's the fuel that for my goal and for the goal I share with people all around the world. But given what can be done with stem cells, given the fact that it's being worked on all over the world, given the fact that one researcher, for example, I can't say who it is, but in 1996, I met him and he had an idea about regeneration. And it had been successful in rats. By the year 2000, just 4 years later, he had done all the groundwork, all the animal work, and he was ready for human trials in just 4 years. Why didn't he go forward? Because there was litigation with a pharmaceutical company over patent rights. That held him up for 2 years when he could have been in human trials. Just now it's being sorted out, but he's lost 3 years. We've lost a lot of time in this country because of political controversy. So, I was going to depend on politics. I never thought that hope in politics would become strange bedfellows. But ultimately, I think the will of the people will prevail. And in spite of conservative, of a certain conservative backlash, particularly in this country, the polls show overwhelmingly that the people want cures and believe that stem cells, for example, as one form of therapy, are ethically and morally right. So there's a lot going on, and I think what's making the difference right now, and what will make the difference, is that the approaches for cure to spinal cord injury are approaches that will also benefit a much broader patient population. I mean, people with every conceivable disease, not only of the brain and central nervous system, but other diseases as well, from Parkinson's to diabetes to cancer. And now, when that happens, now you're talking about profit for pharmaceutical companies, popularity and re-electability for politicians. And then you've unlocked a Pandora's box that can't be closed. And I think that's about to happen right now.
I need to understand, because what do you define cure? What is cure? Is cure
for me?
Again?
The cure is up and out of the wheelchair.
Okay. So
anything along the way is a gain, an improvement, progress, recovery, but yeah, the ultimate goal is to stand and walk. If it requires a cane, it doesn't matter. But
what are the chances of genetic engineering and transplants being socially and medically accepted?
Genetic engineering and transplants, I mean, that's been done for years. I mean, just the idea of transplanting. Yeah, thanks, Ari.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ari. Sorry. Right. Yeah. Well, the whole idea of transplants is something I think the public will find acceptable because, I mean, the ground is broken with the first heart transplant, and it just took the courage of somebody to do it, and now it's pretty much routine. And the same goes for kidney transplants, liver transplants. That's why almost everybody I know is an organ donor and carries a card in their wallet saying so. I think that transplanting genetic material from one person to another is not going to be a very difficult issue for people to grapple with at all.
Well, Chris, we're very proud of having Chris Barnard from South Africa having done that. So
he's man because they kept doing it on baboons, and finally he's the one who said, "All right, now we're going to do it on a human." And as I remember, you know, there's a learning curve, and that was acceptable. That the first patient, I believe, lived about 7 days, something like that, and next patient maybe 12 or 14, and the timeline kept extending until now someone can get a heart transplant and pretty much expect to lead a normal life, and that was an acceptable and proper way to go.
Thanks for the reference to that first heart transplant. So 2 rounds to go. You've achieved a lot in your 50 years. Do you intend slowing down, or do you have a new set of goals or existing goals that you still want to achieve?
No, really, I think it's on a line. No, it doesn't suddenly go off in a different direction. Just because I happen to turn 50, there's nothing to me either magical or frightening about that number. Particularly because I nearly kicked the bucket twice. And, you know, when you barely died a couple of times, birthdays don't really matter. You know, so I mean, I'm grateful for the celebration. I do appreciate that. But nevertheless, no, the line goes forward, and the immediate goals are to work very hard to try to get off the ventilator in the coming year, to maintain the physical exercise, but also to keep up my career in the arts, because I really valued that. I mean, I was an actor for 35 years, and you know, a pianist, and I you know, really enjoyed shifting to directing, and I want to carry on with that because that's part of a normal life as well. In other words, I don't want to become a lab rat, you know, and just an exercise specimen, but just striking that balance and you know, keeping up with everything that our family needs, trying to change the sort of the political landscape and the insurance landscape. Those are projects I'm embarked on now, and I'll continue.
Chris, my last question. You're an absolute hero in South Africa. You really are. There are many, many people with spinal cord injured who would love to meet you, who would love to see you, if only to reiterate their support for what you're doing. So I'm asking you, at some stage, would you and your family consider coming out to something?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for that statement of support, and you know, to everybody who's reading this. I'm very, very grateful that you are placing such trust in me, and I'll try very hard not to let you down. I've always wanted to go to South Africa. I've only been to Africa once and gotten as far as Kenya. But the difficulty really is logistics. Because I'm on the ventilator. I managed a trip to London once, but that was only a 7-hour flight, and yet that was manageable. But it's curious, I have an invitation to go to Tokyo, and to Australia, and now to South Africa. So at some point I may have to dare to make a big trip. But it's also difficult because the nurses who work with me, they also work in local hospitals. And it might be difficult for them to arrange the amount of time we would need. I don't think it'd be worth going if I didn't stay for at least a week or maybe even more. I wouldn't want to go just for a few days.
Sure.
So it's a very big challenge, and yet a very interesting prospect, and it's something I'll really think about.
Chris, thank you. Thank you for being a friend of many spinal cord injured in South Africa, and happy birthday.
Thanks a lot, Harry.